Today, let's talk about the shadow functions of the INFJ. I already created a video on the 4 main functions from an MBTI perspective like 2 weeks ago. I will link the video above so you can check it out after this. It really doesn't matter which video you start with. Before we get started, I want to remind you, if you want to work with me one-on-one, if you want to tap into your INFJ Epic Life through the audio guide, or if you want to look into the free material I offer, you can find absolutely everything beyond this channel in the links in the description. The shadow functions of the INFJ aren't really recognized as such from an MBTI perspective, but there are a lot of other systems that take the shadow functions into consideration because at the end of the day, you have all of them, right? You do have introverted feeling, you do have access to extroverted intuition and so on. And I think it's very important to understand the functions, to have an overview of how they work, how they manifest in our lives. And today isn't just an overall explanation of the shadow functions, but of course there's a bias in it. I will tell you how I use the functions, how I interpret the functions, and how I have been able to integrate them for myself. So hopefully that will, guide you a little bit and help you in discovering how you want to use the functions in your life. And you can take it to the next level. So now, just to give you a quick overview, our 4 main functions that are not part of our shadow functions are introverted intuition, extroverted feeling, introverted thinking, and extroverted sensing. That is what the other video is about. Today, we're going to talk about our shadow functions, which are extroverted intuition, introverted feeling, extroverted thinking, and introverted sensing. And let's kick it off with the 5th function, extroverted intuition. So this function is all about ideas. It's all about gathering ideas based on what is going on around us. It's an extroverted function. And this function is in direct opposition to our 1st function. It's also called our Nemesis function because in so many ways, it's something that we could be very good in. We just choose to ignore it so often. And that is something that can be a problem to us. That's why it's called our Nemesis, because by ignoring this function, and in some cases, this is also called our ignoring function, by neglecting that aspect of ourselves, we can get ourselves in trouble because we're just not looking at the full picture. And I've seen this in other people and it drives me crazy. Like not anymore, but it used to. And you can see this, let's say with an ESTP, they're ignoring their SI. With an FE Dom, so let's say ESFJ or ENFJs, they're ignoring their FI, right? And so for us, it's extroverted intuition. How does that look like? Well, it looks like that we have a very unique point of view in our introverted intuition and we take it too far, meaning we're not willing to look at it from a different perspective. So that means if you believe everybody is betraying you, you're going to hold on to that belief. If you believe that, people really like you, but they are just going through internal problems, you're going to hold on to that belief. And you're not going to change your mind. You're not going to change your mind, although there are a lot of signs that are showing you the opposite. So I've seen on other channels as an example that having NE as your 5th function, as your Nemesis function, could, for example, be that you always think people are trying to betray you. But that's just one example because you have an introverted intuition, perspective of people are always going to, betray me. And so you don't look into the other possibilities that the other person is just, suffering and has different reasons for behaving this way. I, for example, don't have that problem. For me, I have had other problems. For example, for me, it was very often that I had this internal belief of if I do what I want, I'm going to hurt people. I'm a bad person. Right? That was an introverted intuition perspective that I had that, wasn't correct, of course, but it was based on I have a worldview, I have this one unique perspective, and I don't allow other information to come into my system, no matter what was going on around me. So people were showing me that, I can't rely on their opinion. They're really suffering. They're going through pain. They're hurting everybody around them, including themselves. And still, I was valuing their opinion of me. that is a case of I'm completely ignoring my fifth function. I'm ignoring extroverted intuition, because extroverted intuition is all about, it could be different as well. Let's take some other possibilities into consideration. And that being said, it's not a bad thing to be like really good in introverted intuition. The power in having introverted intuition as our first function and the one we're going to lean into and ignore a little bit of, our Nemesis function, we're going to ignore extroverted intuition, is the fact that we can hold on to a belief. For example, if we have an idea we want to pursue. If I would have allowed myself to take all the possibilities into consideration, I might not have gotten my business to this point. Because of course there was the possibility that nobody's going to listen. Of course there was the possibility that I might have to get a job, things like this. But because I held on to my belief, I was able to push through a lot of things. So it doesn't mean that neglecting our first function has to be a negative thing. We get into trouble, and this is for every personality type, if we go way overboard into introverted intuition. So we're not willing to look a little bit into the opposite at all. And that is something that we most definitely have to do. When I've seen the biggest balance in my life happen, when I've seen the biggest changes and the best things for me and how I changed my entire perspective, it was, of course, integrating my extroverted functions. And that includes, also my shadow functions who are extroverted. In that case, extroverted intuition. So I had to, double check. I had to be okay with also allowing some other possibilities to come into my life. So I had a really strong belief in my first function, but if I continuously get the feedback from the world, this is not working, I also have to be open to look at other possibilities. And that's what the fifth function is all about. Like, it can be your nemesis because you're ignoring it. For other types, they might be ignoring their own, moral convictions, for example, in the case of an ENFJ. Because the only thing they care about in that moment when they're ignoring their, nemesis function as an FI is like, I want to help other people and so on. And they can really see the fact that they might be helping others, but it's going against their own sense of, self-worth, or going against their own values, or whatever that may be. So this applies to every personality type. It's really interesting when I've seen it with ESTPs who completely neglect SI, meaning having any kind of stability in their life, a sense of zen. And we're going to talk about that function when we get to our eighth function. Is it the eighth? Yeah, I think so. But that is how I use our, fifth function, our nemesis function, as in make it your friend. Like, integrate it into your life. Don't always hold on to only this one possibility of course, people want to betray me, or of course, people are good people and I'm a bad person. So it can go both ways. It's not that the perspective that you hold on to has to be all positive or all negative. Just take more things into consideration. There might be different ways of looking at a situation that would be beneficial for your understanding of life than the one you're currently holding on to. The sixth function, our critic function, is FI. And FI as a critic function is all about being really strict with our own morality, meaning we are really keen on being a just person and also other people, being just, as in everybody's acting in integrity. I have good intentions, you have good intentions, and we can be overly critical if we take it too far. Again, how does this happen? It happens if we go overboard into our introverted functions, when we go into our NITI loops. Every single time when we become too introverted, we also become too FI. We tap into that function. So we become hypercritical of, how we feel about our own behavior. And for me, that has looked like, if I'm choosing me, I'm going to hurt another person, and I can't live with that. That would make me a bad person. So it was really taking it too far. It was also allowing other people's perception of, you're not a good person, allowing that to have impact on me. But that function in our sixth slot, in our critic, space, is being very critical towards us. And, it can be also critical to others. So for me, that is something that I struggled with for a very long time. And I've seen it with many INFJs. The thing of, I can't choose me. I can't do what is in my own best interest because then I would be a bad person. And you can take it overboard because at some point you have to actually choose you. You have to make sure that you're good because people can be suffering. You can have so much empathy for other people. But if they're letting their anger out on you, you have to actually choose you. You have to do what is best for you, knowing that you're not this ideal altruistic person who's all good all the time. Sometimes you have to bite back, knowing that you're biting back a person who's already suffering. And that is how I have learned to manage that function, to understand that I am not superhuman. I can't be this, person who's doing always everything right from a moral standpoint. I'm going to do things that, aren't in everybody's best interest because, it just happens. But at the same time, this function is a really, really great addition because it pushes us to be a good person. It pushes us to be fair. It pushes us to speak out when we see injustices in the world. And if we find a good balance, this can be a real North Star for us that allows us to go towards being the best version of us that we can be, including being a good human being, and that starts with us first off making sure that we're good, that we feel our best. And because of that, we can give without expecting things in return, like we're really giving out of love and not out of fear. So I really love that function, but it is also the function that has caused me the most pain. So how do we create balance? Going more into our extroverted function, meaning we express our truth. We let people know our truth. We let them feel our truth and not think like, oh, if I do that, then I might be hurting them. Well, it's our truth. We're allowed to be balanced. Speaking your truth, and that meaning you also expressing, oh, you're not a good person because you're doing this. That's how I feel at that moment. Expressing that through your behavior by, for example, making a person feel bad when they don't act right towards you or act right towards another person. Speaking up, that allows us to find a balance as well because we don't have full control of this function. If we go overboard with it, it will cause us to feel really bad about ourselves and feel really unworthy. So that's why we have to balance it and just use it as a North Star towards being a person of integrity. Our seventh function is extroverted thinking. And this is all about systems that are already established. So there is a truth of, things that are working, that people value, that are, all about status, for example, that are accepted in reality. So for example, if you're a manager at a big firm, from a TE standpoint, you're bringing more value than somebody who's, not doing anything for society or for community or whatever it may be. So an example for extroverted thinking would be status, right? That is something that society can agree on from a TE perspective. Doesn't mean that this is right or wrong. That is TE, like I'm adding value or I'm not adding value. I can protect my family. I can provide for my family. Like all of those things are part of that. How can I really add value in that regard? So agreed upon systems of value that society has, decided of that is right and that is something we respect and that is going to be something that we agree on. So that is extroverted thinking from my perspective very often. Why is that my impression of extroverted thinking? Well, because it's in my seventh spot as an INFJ, meaning that's our trickster function. That's the one function that we most likely are not going to use. It's our blind spot. I don't understand it. I don't see it. I don't get it. I don't feel like people are more valuable because they're a CEO of a company than somebody who's, let's say a janitor. Like, I don't see it. I understand that that's how society works, but I don't really feel it intrinsically. And that's what TE is all about. That does not mean that TE is in any kind of way something bad, because FE is also not correct all the time. So you can have a person who's, being kind to everybody, but when it comes down to it, they're not really picking up their part of the effort. So, I have treated people in a way of, oh, we're on eye level and, this is, of course, just a human connection. But for them, they have included this part of societal expectation of, well, I'm here and you're there and this doesn't fit and there are rules and I want you to respect me because I'm higher on the TE spectrum than you are, or vice versa. So, for example, you speak to a person of, oh, we're on eye level, but they feel like they're below you from a, TE perspective, and they cannot, accept that. This is something that I have a very hard time with. So I can explain a little bit more about TE, but please listen to it from somebody who actually has a sense of it. I don't. So I'm just telling you, that's how I experience it. This is definitely my blind spot. And in order to find our balance here is to just, take it into consideration as much as we possibly can. So what does that look like? That means if you, for example, feel in your heart, I feel like I have a connection with that person, but the TE truth is that person hasn't done anything in like the real world in a tangible way, in a TE kind of sense of, oh, I've asked you out, I've shown intention, all of that, it's not going to really work out. Like there are certain things we have to accept about that part of the world, of looking at it from that perspective, understanding that most people, unless you're an ISFJ or an INFJ, don't neglect this like we do. And the best way I have found to get a grasp of this is to say, do I have externally observable facts? That trickster function can become our master function. If we just integrate it into our life just enough so it doesn't get us into Delulu land, because that's where I've been many, many times, that I have fantasized these amazing things that could happen. And I just neglected, externally observable facts. And has gotten me completely, of course, because it all made sense. But I was neglecting the fact that I didn't have any externally observable facts. So, for example, you can have a great idea and all of that, but you haven't really checked out if there are people who actually want that idea or who would benefit from that idea. So externally observable facts are something that I work with and, everything that I offer also in bootcamp and, when I do one-on-one coaching and so on. So it's not enough to just feel like, oh, I made those transformation inside of me. It's like, let's add some externally observable facts. So I did apply for that job. Like that thing was handed in. That's an externally observable fact. I started my YouTube channel. That's an externally observable fact. It's not like, oh, I've just grown internally. There is something external that I can, show. And for example, and not that I like it, I really don't, but that is, the TE truth. And for a lot of people, that is going to have, significance. So when I started this channel, for example, and I saw how I was helping people, that there was value to what I knew and what I had to offer, it really filled up my heart and it gave me so much and it made me feel so accomplished. But in the beginning, I gave up a job in consulting. I gave up a job that from a TE perspective was very valuable. And I did it for something that other people couldn't get. As I said, my husband is an ISTJ. He values TE a lot. He does not value FE. And for him, I really don't think it would make that big of a difference if I would have this business and I would be talking about makeup or if I would be doing what I'm doing now. That is not to say that there's something less worthy of people who do makeup videos. It's just not what would make me feel like I'm adding something that matters to me. That's just not me. But for him, it doesn't matter. And so the thing that matters is this something that is, of value in society? So now that I'm financially successful with this business, now that, I'm going towards 100K YouTube subscribers, people actually start to see my value in ways that they couldn't before because they don't understand what I'm doing here. for me, all the other stuff is just like a nice add-on. But it's incredibly interesting how some people finally start to see you as somebody who's successful, or somebody who knows what they're doing, of somebody who can create something, when I've seen that all the time before with the effect I've had on people, in other areas that are not tangible like this. But for a lot of people, those external things matter, and that's not a bad thing. We also value extroverted feeling. And for somebody who ignores extroverted feeling, for example, my husband, who's, an ISTJ, and that's his trickster function, all those things don't really matter. And there is no, this is right and this is wrong. It's just how it is. And for me and for most INFJs, this is a very tricky function. And what I have learned for myself is just accept it, that a lot of people value this. It doesn't make me right and them wrong. It's just something that helps them to navigate the world while also holding on to, their introverted feeling. And knowing that, I don't neglect it. I look for externally observable facts. I know that I sometimes have to do things in order to get, external validation in some areas that might open doors for me, because that's how people will interpret you. And that's the lens that they see you through. And that is also okay. Like, it's in our best interest to integrate that part in us as well. Just knowing that we do have a blind spot there. So please just pay a little bit more extra attention there. Don't let it get you into, the Lululand. And I have gone there many times. I've held on to people. I've held on to situations that weren't healthy, and very obvious from a TE perspective that they weren't healthy because I was neglecting that function. So just, do the minimum that you can do, and, you can't overuse it anyway. So just don't neglect it completely. Now let's talk about our last function, or our 8th function, our demon function, which is SI, introverted sensing. So introverted sensing, from my perspective, is all about internal peace. It's the one thing that we very often neglect in order to create external peace, meaning you allow other people to be, dramatic around you. We allow other people to put negativity on us. All of this is happening when we are going overboard with that function as well, because we don't have a lot of, grasp on it. And most of the time, it happens because we're neglecting our SE, our 4th function. Remember, I always say you find your balance by tapping more into your extroverted functions. So this function is something that we don't have a lot of hold on if, other people are putting their external energy as an SE towards us. So if people express, anger or force, that kind of energy, if they express it on us and we don't put a barrier on top of it, that's when we get really affected by this, and we can't hold the fort, so to say, right? We don't have a lot of capacity in this. That being said, we do need a sense of control in this area. Otherwise, we just get lost. This is really a sense of self, as in a physical sense of self, a physical way I can hold on to my own energy of who I am, how I really experience the world in a sensing way. This function is also associated with being able to create really deep memories, going really deep and conquering something as in somebody externally is giving you a sensation and it really makes you into somebody. So you become somebody through the experiences that are coming into your world. So our capacity for this isn't very big. And so I have learned, okay, it's not very big, but I need to get a grasp on it. So how do we do that? Well, we do that through 2 things. First off, we tap into our 4th function, extroverted sensing, as in what I have, I put it out there, meaning I create an external effect, as in I go and do something. I'm adding my flavor to the world. I'm going and conquering what I can conquer. It's not going to be a lot, as in fuel and drive and physical energy. I'm not an extroverted sensor who can like go, 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 go. But, I don't have to be. I always say we as INFJs, we don't have to do all the things. We just have to do the right things. And we use all our other functions to know exactly the path we want to go on. And then we use the energy that we do have to move forward. And then we go from the notion of, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. That's how we have the biggest success on our terms and like really see that, we're creating a life that is meaningful to us. So in order to hold on to our SI, we have to express as much as possible, because that's how you pretty much, you empty out your bucket, right? You have all of this sensation. You have to get it out somehow. What you have stored, you just have to get it out somehow. That makes it lighter on you to hold on to, your sense of well-being. So think of it as like, how you feel when you go to a yoga retreat, that kind of peace, that kind of centeredness. That is, what we're looking for. So that's the first thing. The second thing, and that is part of SE as well, is to show people our boundaries there. And so it, on some level shows our weakness as well, as in I cannot take so much. So that doesn't mean that you can't have extroverted sensors around you or people who value that. It's just like when I show you I cannot take all of your force when you're around me, you have to not, put force against me. Don't be aggressive towards me. Don't be aggressive around me. That doesn't mean that I don't value extroverted sensing. I love it. I love when I see people who go for what they want. It really inspires me. But it's one thing to use that to move forward on your path. It's another thing to, put it on the outside and like just affect people with it in a way that isn't making you feel good. And so I've had people in my life who are really strong in SE or value SE a lot, who have, not put that force onto me, who haven't been acting this way towards me because they just know that's not something I can handle. And I'm very upfront about it. It's not like I go to people and say, hey, by the way, you can't put that much SE on me. No, that's not how it works. And that's not how I work it. But you still let people know when they act in a way that is aggressive towards you. You let them know, control yourself. I cannot take it. And that's just boundary showing. And that's just setting boundaries. That's all it is. And so that's how I have gotten a grasp on it. That's also, having a habit and a routine that I create through effort. Again, I can't do a lot of it, but what I can, I do. So that means I have a structured life. There's a part of me that is very, boring and stable, because that allows me to then do the extraordinary things in my life. I have a rather, normal schedule. I go to sleep at a good time. I get enough sleep. I make sure that I'm as healthy as I possibly can. So all of those things that allow me to really feel myself in a sensing way internally that really ground me and also ground me in reality. And I think like a big part of it, again, is the function on the other side as an extroverted sensing, as in like let it out. You need to have an effect on the outside world. You cannot only be reactive. You have to conquer the world, conquer your world. Conquer your world, change it in the way you see it fit. You are not forcing anybody to do anything, but it's like, this is how I see, my epic life, and I'm going to go for it. I'm going to conquer the world, and I'm going to conquer it through my perspective, and it's going to be not so much SE, it's going to be so much more NI. Think of Gandhi. So Gandhi is like somebody who's used an example as an INFJ, somebody who had like a big effect. There was force. Yes, you could say, oh, he didn't do much. But yeah, he did. He did do. He just didn't do something that looked like a lot from the outside. But he had a belief, and there was also external evidence for that. He stayed in a situation. He continued his path. He didn't stop. There was progress there. And for us INFJs, I have found, and, you will see other YouTubers and other, understandings of those functions, they will tell you the same thing. We as INFJs, we need progress. You need to have something that is moving forward in the real world based on how you see the world. That's how we feel, a sense of completion. And those are the things I work on with my clients. Those are the things that are big and the main thing in bootcamp is let's go into SE, let's make things happen, taking all the other functions into consideration. So yeah, remember, if you want my help with any of this when it comes to your life, then work with me 101. You can also look into the INFJ Epic Life audio guide. So that gives you an overview of what to do and what strategies to use when you start making the big steps in your life. And we also have a lot of free material that you can check out. Everything you need to know you can find in the links in the description. And if you want to watch another video now that is in alignment with today's topic, then check out the video you see on the screen right now. I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.